Hello, gay people. Welcome to episode 2 of Kings on the Aux, the podcast where drag kings talk music and gender performance. I'm your host, Caius Crow, also known as Ben. First of all, I wanted to say thank you, everybody, for all the love and enthusiasm and social media hype about our first episode. I did not expect us to reach that many people. You know, about a year ago, while I was working on a different interview project, I spoke with Ryder Slowly, and for anyone who is not familiar with drag or not an Ohio local, Ryder is one of our most successful kings in Cleveland, who has done so much for drag king visibility. But I always think about the way Ryder described king drag as a niche of a niche of a niche. In terms of likely audiences, you have mostly gay people, then you have gay people who enjoy drag, then you have gay people who enjoy specifically king drag. So then this series, I feel, is one step more niche than that. Not just people who enjoy seeing or performing king drag, but people who want to approach king drag as an art form and zero in on the storytelling we do through our music. I had all these friends and colleagues telling me this was a great idea, and of course I appreciate that early support and I wanted to believe them, but it didn't become real for me until I saw just how many people were talking about the show when it first came out. So whether you're back for more after episode 1 or this is your first time hearing us, thank you. I'm so excited to keep doing this kind of work, I hope, for a very long time. My latest guest is a real silly guy who I respect very much, Mr. Abel N. Willing. He is your currently reigning kingpin. Last year he won the first season of Cleveland's All King competition, hosted and produced by Ryder Slowly. He is one half of the drag duo Not Wearing Wigs, together with Frida Von Freakum, who won season 3 of the Mixed Zephyr drag competition. Not Wearing Crowns, as some like to call them. Abel also hosts and produces the Jester's Privilege drag comedy showcase at Imposters Theater. We'll talk about that show later in this episode. The first time I met Abel was his solo drag debut at Casting Call in June 2023. I'll never forget that because it was my open stage debut. I did a transgender vampire My Chemical Romance number, which describes most of my drag, but I went right after Abel. He did his really awesome Bob Ross comedy number. I had to follow that, and obviously he won the whole show. So my first impression of Abel was him absolutely kicking my ass in a competition setting. Since then, I've had a lot of chances to see his drag and talk to him out of drag, and no matter what he's doing, it is always a masterclass in craft and professionalism. For this episode, we got to break down my personal favorite Abel and Willing number, his Benjamin Franklin mix. It's so funny and so well done. Let's get into it. So I know there are 2 versions of it. We'll talk about that a bit later. But first off, how would you describe the concept of this mix in one sentence?
I'm not the most concise person, but in one sentence, the concept of this mix is Benjamin Franklin gets struck by electricity and becomes a little feminine woman. with a girl-like voice. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's all you need. That is the mix. I couldn't have said it better. Benjamin Franklin gets struck by lightning. That's the mix. Mm-hmm. So for anyone who hasn't seen you do this live, could you take a minute to describe the props and like general choreo and presence that go into this mix? How do you go about visually and physically representing it?
Yeah, well, so this is like the second mix that I ever made and ever performed. So this is like an OG Abel and Willing number, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like when people think of Abel and Willing, like maybe this is like one of my first numbers that pop up in their head.
Hmm.
But so basically, I mean, I'm dressed up as Benjamin Franklin. Like I have the whole shebang on. Like I have no hair except for in the back, like his iconic half bald head. And I just got the Benjamin Franklin fit on, and like there's a little part in the beginning where I'm talking, and it's like, oh no, I hope I don't get struck by electricity. I hope I don't get struck by lightning. And then I get struck by lightning via a really high quality lightning sound effect that I took from YouTube.
Yes.
And then, just throughout the mix, I continue to get struck by lightning and fall. And I have fairy lights wrapped around me and they're battery operated. So when I get struck, I turn the fairy lights on and it's like, oh my God, like my body has been overcome with electricity. And I have kind of been, electrocuted in a sense. Yeah, but just throughout the mix, I continue to get struck by lightning, and then it switches to different songs that reference either electricity or lightning or something of the sort. So pretty there's not, I'm not like a dancing diva. I've never been a dancing diva. So pretty much all I do is I go up there and I do my thing, and all of a sudden there's a very loud lightning sound effect that's probably too loud for the mix. It's probably disruptive for the audience. And then all of a sudden I'm laying on the ground, because that's what I imagine would happen if I were to get struck by lightning.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, I think if we are briefly taken aback by the lightning strike, I think that that's okay. I think that's what we want, actually. So yeah, it can be loud. She can be loud. That is everything about the mix that I think we're going to riff off of today. So thank you for giving us a strong start. The only thing that I would add is that at least one of the times that I saw you do this, you had a Barbie kite as a prop. I
That is
remember that, and it
true.
was very important.
Thank you for saying that. There are so many props that exist within my house because all my numbers are so prop heavy that I forgot that yes, I have a kite during that number. And the Barbie kite, it's like a pink kite with, the animated Barbie on it that I got from Dollar Tree. And I carried around because, Benjamin Franklin is obviously known for discovering electricity via a kite and key. But the Barbie kite really has nothing to do with the number. It was just the only kite that I could find last minute when I was at Dollar Tree. And then I was like, this is kind of iconic because you would not expect to see Benjamin Franklin and animated Barbie existing within the same universe. So it's kind of a fun juxtaposition. But then I used that kite so many times to do this number because this is one of my most performed numbers that it got so disheveled and dirty and ripped because I fall to the ground during this number and it's kind of physically aggressive that it
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
it is torn to pieces. So then I had to go buy a new kite for the last time I did it. And they didn't have Barbie, but they had Disney princesses, and it's two times the size of their original kite. And it's kind of just an amplified version of young female characters on a colorful kite.
And I think that really does. I mean, I know that it came about originally because of just what was available to you. But I
Hmm.
think that that juxtaposition really adds something tonally to the mix.
Hmm.
And honestly, it ties in really well with just the tone and the transformation that you described initially. I think the first thing that I want us to take a look at in the mix itself is the version that uses a clip of you speaking. And it's it's your own voice. And one thing that really stands out to me about that is the way that you have this exaggerated, it's not quite a Valley Girl effect, but it's to the left of that.
Ugh, I'm Benjamin Franklin, and I love flying kites when it's thundering and lightninging. I sure hope I don't get struck by lightning. I said I sure hope.
You're introducing us to this mix, and so yeah, Ben Franklin is just a little gay guy. We've got it as we start off, so it's already funny. So just what made you decide to record that spoken intro yourself, and what went into what went into creating that soundbite?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, do I know a ton about Benjamin Franklin? No. Do I know what he would sound like? No. I imagine it's not me and like, because it is like an amplified version of my voice where I kind of sound like a little bit of a valley girl and like, I don't know, it's like a very feminine, exaggerated version of my voice, which is funny because I don't know, I just really like during numbers when something happens that you wouldn't expect. Like
Hmm.
you would not expect Benjamin Franklin to sound like this and to be and like also like the words I use, I'm like, ugh, I sure hope I don't get struck by lightning. It's just like you wouldn't expect that noise and that voice to come out of Benjamin Franklin. So I just thought it would be silly. And that's like something I've done during a few like mixes of mine is like added my own voice or like I like hit up a friend and I'm like, hey, I can't do this like really deep male narrator voice, but can you do it for me? Because when you're making a mix, you can only use things that already exist for the most part. So, like, you can go to YouTube and you can look up like Benjamin Franklin documentary and like pull a clip from that, right, and use it. But
Hmm.
you can't really find a clip of Benjamin Franklin being like, "Oh my God, I hope I don't get struck by electricity." So I was like, the only way that that can happen is if I record it myself. So yeah, I don't even remember necessarily like why I said it the way I said it, but I'm pretty sure I probably just pulled out my iPhone and like recorded it and then airdropped it to my MacBook, put it into GarageBand. It was like, yep, this sounds perfect. This is exactly what needed to happen. But yeah, no, I just think it's so silly that like I'm dressed as Benjamin Franklin. Like I look the part, right? But then
Hmm.
I'm not acting the part per se.
Exactly. Again, I really think that that helps to enhance it because like you said, if what you need tonally and narratively for the mix doesn't already exist, you do have to create it yourself. And I just think about this thing, re-listening to this mix has gotten me thinking about like the ways I've heard people do that. I know that one thing that's I've heard a few performers do now is do that kind of like robotically generated like AI text to speech voice.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't have heard that. Like it's funny. It's like jarring and it's funny. But this is something where I think you doing it, you voice acting Ben Franklin a little disrespectfully is going to be funnier than
Mhm.
having a robot read it.
Yeah, there's something that like there's something fun about listening to a mix or like seeing a performer on stage and then you hear their real voice come out and you're like, this person took the time to like write this joke or like write this silly soundbite and then put it into the mix. It's just like a funny thing to hear and see. And it's also like kind of like a vulnerable moment because not everybody
Hmm.
loves the sound of their own voice. And like when you're on stage and you have to hear your own voice like amplified so loud and like you're trying to be funny or some people will like add in their own voice and they're like trying to be sexy or something. It's kind of like a scary moment because
Yeah,
everyone's like hearing you act in a way and they're already seeing you like perform drag and it's just like another layer that can be scary, but it's also so funny.
definitely. And I think like part of how it can be funny is because it is this moment of vulnerability and effort, both. And I think
Mhm.
it's especially relevant when we're talking about drag, where it's like obviously everybody in drag, everybody in the world has a different relationship to their voice, but I think in drag it can be kind of heightened where it's like, oh, I'm used to presenting something that is like something that like I am deliberately creating on my body and my voice is something that like, ooh, this might be a little different than what people are expecting from me.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just think that's something that makes it extra effective and also extra cool.
Thank you. I mean, I love when people can tell that you put effort into something.
Yeah.
That's always like, yeah. I had somebody who came up to me at a show recently and they said, I love your drag because like you just don't take it too seriously. And that's kind of like a backhanded compliment a bit because
Ooh.
I do take it seriously, but I think because I do silly numbers, people are like, I don't know, there's just this expectation that maybe I'm just kind of like throwing these numbers together. I'm like throwing these mixes together in GarageBand. I'm just going up and doing whatever. But it's like being silly actually takes a lot of effort. Like trying to curate something that could make an audience laugh or giggle isn't easy. And it's not something that everybody can do. And I don't know. Put more effort into your drag 2025.
Absolutely. You have to take it very seriously to like be silly effectively, because if something is just like thrown together, the jokes might not land the way you want them to.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I hear the rhetoric of like, oh, to do drag you can't take yourself too seriously, and it's like, oh yeah, you have to be like willing, you have to be willing to maybe risk looking silly or to
Hmm.
do something that doesn't feel comfortable for you, like maybe at first. But yeah, no, you are very serious in terms of how you have to actually build stuff up and prepare it. That actually kind of links into one of the questions I had about the timing and physicality of this performance. So I've seen you do this number twice. So two different venues. Once was at a brunch venue and once was at Zephyr, so like with all of the stairs and levels and
Hmm.
concrete. And at least from like, for sure, from the observer's perspective and kind of thinking about performances I see from like a craft perspective, well, like, okay, how did they make that? It looks like it has to be really strategic because you have to collapse and you have to switch the lights on and you have to like do hit all of these key moments at just the right timing in the music. So just kind of as a behind the scenes question, how much like planning and rehearsal with like the space you'll be performing in mind generally goes into this performance?
Well, this is funny because I was just talking about like put more effort into your drag 2025, but surprisingly, I don't put that much effort into thinking about the venue because
Hmm.
there's something almost funny about like and this is just specifically for this number. For some numbers, like I really like I try to look up pictures of the venue if I've never been there, videos of the venue, and I'm like, how am I gonna like work the space? Like where am I gonna go? But for this number, because it is so chaotic, the fact that I might not even know where I'm going to collapse when I get struck by lightning is funny and it's unpredictable. And like the audience can't really predict where it's going to happen because I don't even know where it's going to happen. And it's also so hard sometimes to plan that kind of thing during a number because depending on the show, people might be tipping down and you have to like work your way through the audience and like interact with the audience and get their dollars. But then at other shows, like people aren't really tipping, so you kind of have to stay on stage and like get their attention and draw it back to you. So it really depends on, you know, how much time there is to work through the audience, how much space there is. I did do this number at that brunch that you were referencing. It's pretty much like a circle that you can walk around, right?
Hmm.
So the amount of space that I have to flail my body and flail my limbs in a dramatic way is limited compared to a venue like Zephyr, which is outside and there's those huge stairs. And I did know when I did this number at Zephyr that it had the potential to be funnier because I had more room to flail my limbs. And like almost kind of falling down the stairs is silly. Um, yeah, but honestly, for this number, I just like obviously I've listened to this mix so many times, and it's funny because when I listen to songs that are in this mix, I like if they just pop up on Spotify and I'm listening to it at work or something, I expect to hear the sound of lightning, and I forget that there's like a second verse to these songs because I'm so used to hearing them in the context of this mix. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I know the mix so well, so I know when the lightning's gonna come, and wherever I'm at in the venue is where I'm gonna collapse. I'm gonna make it work, whether it's in front of somebody, whether it's when they're handing me a dollar, whether it's when I'm on stage. I always try to do the first one where like people can see me very clearly, like I'm front and
Hmm.
center. So because if I'm doing this number and I'm talking about how I'm Benjamin Franklin, I look like I'm Benjamin Franklin, I have this kite, and I'm like tucked away, like interacting with two audience members, and I collapse. No one's gonna know what happened. They're gonna be like, what was that lightning strike sound? But if I'm front and center in the middle, that sets up the tone for the rest of it because they're like, okay, I just saw Abel get struck by lightning. He like rolled over somehow to turn on his lights, and now his body is lit up with fairy lights. Like he's, been shocked with electricity. And then that way, when I get struck by lightning the several other times in this mix, it makes sense whether you can like see it super clearly or not.
So that sounds like a pretty like effective way to structure performance beyond. Like you have like a blueprint, but there's also a lot of moment to moment decisions. So
Mhm.
thank you for that insight. I can also when you're talking about like you're expecting to hear the transition now when you hear those
Hmm.
songs, I can really relate to that because I have so many. Like honestly, like whenever I like mix a song, I can't really like listen to it normally
Hmm.
ever again because I'm totally expecting the like smash cut into a different song, and I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean that we're not going to get My Chemical Romance now? I'm confused.
Exactly. And also, like, I don't know if you feel this way, but I get really nervous before I perform, like, very nervous every single
Mm.
time. So, whenever I listen to a song that I perform to when I'm not performing, like, I kind of get anxious. Like, I'll be in the car and,
Yeah.
like a song will come on, and I'm like, oh, like, I can't listen to this right now because it just makes me feel like I'm about to go on stage and perform. Or, like, when I did Kingpin and we had to do the lip sync bracket and, like, lip sync against each other.
Oh.
Whenever I hear any of those songs, I'm like, I get filled with so much anxiety because it feels like I'm about to go and compete, and it's just scary.
That does, yeah, no, that would be super scary, especially like in a, I mean anywhere, but especially in a competition context,
Mhm.
because then it's like fight or flight mode. I definitely like, I get that like bodily feeling of, ooh, I can't listen to this right now. For me, it's usually more like, oh, now I'm thinking about everything that I didn't do perfectly when I performed this. And just reliving usually just the parts that I didn't like about the performance, but it's yeah, yeah, I can understand to an extent. Let's talk a little more about the mix itself and the song choices. You gave a pretty good summary of like they're all songs that give some kind of reference to electricity or like shocks or like we have these like references that are really like driving home the point of the mix. But I guess my first question about the mixes themselves is how did you end up with two different versions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I have this first version that I've done several times, right? And I've done it, it's a family-friendly number, so it's super easy to pull out for like brunches, and it's also fun, I think, for everybody. It's fun for the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun to do at night shows, it's fun to do at brunches, and it's the second number I've ever made, so I feel like it's just a go-to number of mine. And then the second one, um, somebody asked me to do a Hamilton themed burlesque show. And
Right.
this is going to be a controversial thing to say, but I have never seen Hamilton, and I did do the show, and I did not understand what was happening during any of it because I fear I have not seen it. And I was like, yeah, I want to do this because I I want to go to Columbus and perform, and like this cast is cool, and these people are cool, and like this will be a fun show, I'm sure. Like I have nothing against Hamilton, I've just never seen it. But
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, I do have a Benjamin Franklin number. Turns out Benjamin Franklin's not in Hamilton. That's breaking news. I didn't know. Um, but I was like, I'm sure I can find a way to retool this number so that it's like kind of Hamilton-esque. So, Kais, have you seen Hamilton?
I have seen it. I think I saw it. I saw it once in high school and then I saw it again because I was like ushering a performance of it, so I was like seeing it from the back. I did in middle school like memorize the soundtrack for a little while. Like there were some years that I could just cycle through the whole thing if I wanted to. So I didn't think that I was preparing and researching for this interview, but it turns out I was. So, yes, I did know that Ben Franklin was not in Hamilton, which made me really excited to hear what you were going to say and do with it.
See, I feel like a lot of gay people are super into Hamilton. It's like everybody I know is like, yeah, I know every song. And probably the responsible thing for me to do was to either watch Hamilton or to not do this show. But, I have an inquisitive mind. I
Oh,
have
yeah.
I have a spirit that won't stop. So I was like, how can I tie Benjamin Franklin into Hamilton? And correct me if I'm wrong since you have watched Hamilton, but there's like a few references to Benjamin Franklin and Hamilton, right? I'm going to sound really dumb because I don't know all of the history that Hamilton is built upon, but there's a few references
There
where
is at least one reference that I can think of. He is name dropped at least once.
And that's
Yeah.
enough. And that was
Yeah.
enough for me to be like, yeah, I can retool this number. So I was just Googling, like, I don't know. I was Googling, like, is Benjamin Franklin in Hamilton at first, and then I found out the answer was no, and then I was like, oh shit. But then I found out that, oh my God, what's the guy who wrote Hamilton?
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yes, I found out that he had written a song about Benjamin Franklin that hypothetically could have been part of Hamilton, but then wasn't because whatever, like Benjamin Franklin wasn't really included in Hamilton. But then the Decemberist,
Mm-hmm.
the band who has some sort of connection to Lin-Manuel Miranda, they like still produced the song and created the song, and it is a song. I think it's just called Benjamin Franklin, or maybe it's called Ben's Song or something like that.
It's Ben
Yeah.
Franklin's song. Yeah.
It's a combination, yeah, Ben Franklin's song. So I listened to that and I was like, oh my God, this sounds like something that could be in Hamilton with my limited knowledge of Hamilton. So I was like, if I could figure out a way to tie that in and then make a reference towards Hamilton in like a little opening monologue, then I think this qualifies as a Hamilton number. And I think that no one will hate my guts forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my friend Anthony record this like little intro, and because I don't have a super deep manly voice, so I like put on my Instagram story, I think, like, who has a deep voice that can record something for me, because I
I
didn't want to
remember
use
that. I remember you doing that.
I had a few people who reached out because I didn't want to use like generative AI or anything. I wanted somebody real, like I wanted the real voice to like say these exact words for me. And I had a few people reach out, and I ended up using Anthony's version just because he got it to me the quickest. And he basically says like, Benjamin Franklin was blah blah blah, and
Hamilton is a revolutionary story of passion, unstoppable ambition, and the dawn of a new nation, but it leaves out an important founding father.
blah blah blah. He says all that. And then I go into this number and I do that Benjamin Franklin song that is very Hamilton-esque to set the tone of like, oh, this is kind of like a Hamilton number. And then I basically do that original mix where I get struck by lightning, and then all of a sudden I'm singing that Miranda Cosgrove song where it's like, sparks fly, it's like electricity, which is just so silly. And then I basically do the original mix, but just in a shorter version. And then at the end, Anthony says,
And that is why Benjamin Franklin was not included in Hamilton.
because he died getting struck by electricity, at least in my world, which isn't true. Definitely not true. And I did well in history class in high school. I do want to make that clear. I do know that he didn't die via lightning strike, but in my world, he did. So yeah, basically that second mix came about because I had to do this show and I had never seen Hamilton, but I did have a Benjamin Franklin number that I knew I could retool somehow. And that's why drag kings are resourceful. You have to be resourceful.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, you don't really have to worry so much about historical accuracy when you're doing like a Hamilton mix, because Lin-Manuel Miranda admits himself that unfortunately when I was into Hamilton, I read like all the Lin-Manuel Miranda interviews and can confirm that he said that he straight up lied about some things. It was like, well, technically this guy had a bunch of sons, but I'm gonna say he had no sons, because that makes a better story. So you get to say that Ben Franklin died getting struck by lightning, because that makes a better
It makes
story.
a better story, yeah.
Exactly. I really like that you brought up like when we get the Miranda Cosgrove song that cuts in, because that's something that's really fun for me about this mix, because it's just like whiplash after whiplash in this mix, because first you come out dressed as Benjamin Franklin, and then we hear your voice acting, and then there's I'm more talking now about the original version just because that's the one that I've seen live, but you get struck by lightning, so we're like, oh my god, like what happened here, what's gonna happen for the rest of this mix, and then we hear the voice of fucking iCarly singing, and then just then moving on from that, because the two the two songs that you use after that are Electric Feel and Electric Love, which are, solid Struck by Lightning songs. And yeah, I just really like that we have these very upbeat and fun songs so that we can just kind of stay in the mood, like throughout this performance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did the Miranda Cosgrove song first. Kissing Me is what I think is good. I think she wrote it probably when, I don't know if she wrote it. I think she performed it when she was like 15 or 16. So it's a very fresh, young, iCarly-esque Miranda Cosgrove voice. And when I was thinking about this mix, I like thought of a few songs that I already knew that had to do with like electricity. And Electric Feel by MGMT and then Electric Love are two ones that like definitely pop into my brain and probably pop into like a lot of people's brains when they think of that theme. But then there's that iconic line from the Miranda Cosgrove song where she says sparks fly, it's like electricity, and it's just like the perfect intro to Benjamin Franklin getting struck by lightning. Like it just flowed so well, and I knew that would set the mix up for I don't know, just like a fun number, because that's the last thing that you're going to expect when Benjamin Franklin gets struck by electricity, is that he comes out with a very young 15-year-old girl sounding voice. And the other two songs, yeah, like they're also high energy and they're fun. And when I'm thinking of numbers, like I don't want them to be all one tone, right? Like you shouldn't come out with a number like 100% energy, because then there's nowhere to go other than being stagnant or going down for the rest of your number. So I wanted to have those like loud lightning sound effects, so I like fall to the ground and like the number kind of stops for a second, and then it's picked back up by like another upbeat song that I can like work my way up to and reach another peak until I get struck by lightning again, and it like dramatically goes back down, because then I'm laying on the ground for 5 seconds or however long doing nothing. Which is interesting to watch, because when you're on stage and if you're in the audience and you're watching somebody on stage, if you're seeing them do, high kicks and splits for like 4 minutes. First of all, I love that. I'm not going to bash on that. That's so fun. But it can only be so dynamic, because if it's high energy from start to finish, you kind of maybe zone out after a minute, because you're like, oh, I saw them do this trick. It's awesome. That's so cool they can do that. But I don't have any anticipation for the rest of the number, because it seems like they've exerted all of their energy already. But when you do a number that has several peaks and valleys, I just think it keeps it more interesting. And those peaks are, like the ends of the songs, and then the strikes of lightning, and then the valleys are me laying on the ground for several seconds doing nothing.
Yeah, and I think that that's really key to keep in mind in structuring a mix. Thank you for saying that, because I'm always like, the blessing and the curse of doing an MFA and probably a lot of arts degrees, to be honest, is that everything is a craft conversation now. It's like, ooh, I've got to dissect. I have to have a working theory of everything. And I have a working 3 principles of mix making. And they are connection, escalation, and surprise. So that escalation is like, you're not going to start off with your 100%. Like you said, you need somewhere to go. And the surprise is definitely, I mean, we've talked about a lot of them, but I think the lightning strikes are like really driving that home. So yeah, it's like giving yourself, this is going to be on audio, but I'm like vaguely gesturing like a silly little wave where it needs to have.
There's a wave happening.
There's a wave happening. It needs to have the peaks and valleys, like you said. Otherwise we don't know what else you have to do.
Right. And I think that's something that like it takes a minute as a performer to figure that out. Like I definitely went through a phase where like I was like, I don't want to have the audience be bored, so therefore I have to come out with 100% energy, and I have to be like super funny and super like chaotic for the entire number. Otherwise they're going to be like, this performer and this drag king. Drag kings are boring. I'm going to go get a drink because this drag king's so boring if he doesn't come out with a bunch of energy. But yeah, like you were saying, I mean, you really do need, I'm doing the hand gesture wave that Caius was doing. You really do need, those highs and lows.
Absolutely. And I think that it can be just a real like reframing of your mindset, where instead of thinking like, oh God, like people are going to be bored watching me like instead starting to think of it as like, oh, people are going to be like waiting, anticipating to see what I'm about to do. And they're going to be, the longer I can draw out that wait and still make it interesting, like the bigger the payoff is going to be. I think that that's really fun once people get the confidence to do that. You know, while we're talking about escalation and stage presence, I want to do a little throwback to actually the first time that I interviewed you, which was not on recording. It was transcribed and edited around for magazine purposes. But we've talked a bit before about your background in improv. But now that I have you on the record once again, talk to me about your influences. What artists and pop culture and like ideas do you see your comedy coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is very simple. It's 2 words. It's Amanda Bynes. I love Amanda Bynes. I do have a dancing lobster tattoo. This is audio, so I won't force you to see it right now. But so growing up, I was super into the Amanda Show.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, and for people who don't know, the Amanda Show was a show hosted by Amanda Bynes. I'm just gonna like list off the Wikipedia definition. Was like a sketch comedy show hosted by Amanda Bynes. And she was super young when she was doing it. I think she was like 12, 14. She was very young, and you know, I'm several years younger than her. So being a young girl, quote unquote girl, and watching this other like young woman on TV be so funny and do these characters and wear wigs, and she did male characters, she did all sorts of things. You know, she obviously has, what's the movie that she's in?
Is
Dressed up
she
as a man.
is this is terrible that I don't already know this. Is she in She's the Man? Is that her?
She's the Man, that's her, yeah.
Yeah. The
That's
12th
her.
Night adaptation. Yes, that's her. We've got it.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, watching her be able to transform into these characters in a funny way and to be a funny young woman was so motivating for me. And that sounds so silly to say, but it's true. Because unfortunately, when you think of comedy, the first people that probably come to your mind are like old white men, right? Because those are the people who dominate the comedy space. But for me to have, you know, this like influential person on my screen that I'm watching every single day be so young, be a woman, be successful, be funny, I was like, oh my God, I could do that. I want to do that. So ever since I was young, every Christmas, I would ask my mom for a new wig. I would get a wig every Christmas. There's like framed photos of me at my house where I'm wearing like real human hair wigs. It was like my main Christmas present. Because I was like, this is funny. Like I could do something funny with this. And I would write scripts for like TV shows and movies and act them out with my siblings. I'm from a big family, so there were 7 of us in total. I have a sibling, I have 2 brothers, and then I have a younger sister. And we would all just like make these movies and make these TV shows and act them out and wear silly costumes and wigs. And it's really because of the TV shows I watched when I was a kid. And I mean, in addition to the Amanda Show, I was also really into this Cartoon Network show or Adult Swim show called Home Movies.
Oh.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a cartoon where they like make sketches and like these home movies where they like dress up as characters, and I just knew I really wanted to do that. And I don't know, I remember when I was in 5th grade, I had a Halloween costume where I was just dressed up as a man. Like my costume was just man. It was just man. And I like made my mom take me to Goodwill. I got a suit that was way too big for me. I had a wig. I had a male, quote unquote, hair wig. And like a top hat and a cane, and I was just dressed up as a rich man. And all my teachers were like, "Oh, are you Charlie Chaplin?" And I was like, "Yeah, I so am." I had no idea who that was. I was in 5th grade. Who Charlie Chaplin is, but I didn't want to tell them that I was just dressed up as a man for the fun of it all. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm Charlie Chaplin." And then this is also problematic, but my school, I'm from a small town, did gender swap days for Secret Week, where he would dress up as the other gender, and I would get so excited. I was like, this is my time to shine. And that was definitely, you know, just my queerness peeking out. But
Right.
but I was so excited about it. So yeah, I mean, I love sketch comedy. I love SNL. And I really do love old Nickelodeon shows. Old Nickelodeon shows are so funny. The Disney girls always get all the attention. Love Hannah Montana. That's also an inspiration for me, like
Yes.
becoming a different person. But like iCarly is so funny. And
Hmm.
they did a web show where they would dress up as characters. And okay, I'm like realizing right now, like iCarly, Hannah Montana, The Amanda Show, like they're all like dressing up as characters and wearing wigs. And that's the media I consumed so much when I was younger that I was just like, I have to do this. And they're all obviously like comedy shows. So I was like, yeah, I have to do this. And there was like a period of my life where I was like, I'm not funny.
Hmm.
I'm not a silly dude. I was super shy growing up. Like, so
Oh,
I won most quiet in the eighth grade superlative, which
wow. Well,
shouldn't be a thing.
first of all, what a mind fuck that that's a thing.
It shouldn't be a thing. It hurt my feelings a lot. Um, but I was like super quiet and shy, so no one ever thought of me as funny. And it wasn't until like late high school that I started making sketch comedy on YouTube and posting it. And I would like not talk in class, but then I would like post on my social media, like, hey guys, go watch my latest sketch. And then people started thinking I was funny. And senior year of high school, I ended up winning like, okay, I won the superlative funniest social media. They changed the superlative from funniest to funniest social media, which is kind of like a dig because it's like this
Yeah,
person's not funny in real life. They're only funny online.
that's awful.
It's so mean, kind of. Yeah, but I was like, okay, thank you. But anyway, this is a really drawn out answer to your question. But like, I just love sketch comedy. I love being silly, funny. I love all those TV shows I watched when I was a kid where people would wear wigs. I just think it's fun to be a different person.
First of all, I encourage long drawn out answers because that means that we get to know more about you and what went into this. I really love getting that insight and that like yeah, there is kind of a holy trinity of childhood comedy for you. That's really cool. So, yeah, you've come pretty far from that since then. I believe that at the time of this recording, you host what's right now the only all drag king show in Cleveland, and it's the only all drag king comedy show that I've heard about anywhere. Jester's Privilege. So, what has starting that and like making a space for like kings in comedy meant for you? What has that been like?
It's been so awesome. Like, I've been thinking about doing something like that for so long. It's a manifestation of everything that I've wanted and everything that I've looked up to and have been inspired by for so long. Like I called it on my Instagram story, like my version of iCarly. I sound kind of like dorky right now. I'm like, I love iCarly. Like I'm
Oh,
fully
not at
24
all.
years old. But I do, I'm sorry. But not only to have like a comedy show, which I've never really been to an all drag comedy show, period. Like whether
Mm,
it's a king show or like a show that has queens and kings and things. Like I've never been to a show that's primarily just comedy. There'll be like a few comedic performers at pretty much any show or like alternative performers, but I know that my favorite kind of drag to watch is people just being silly goofy.
of
And
course, yes.
and I knew that there could be a cool space for that. And then on top of that, creating a space specifically for drag kings, because it's no secret that drag kings don't get the same opportunities as queens. You see,
Mm,
like, pretty much every show poster will be five queens, and if you're lucky, you get a king on there. And sometimes it feels like, they just throw us in because they feel bad or because they, like, have to meet a quota. And I didn't want kings to feel like, they were the last option, and I'm just throwing one of them into my show because, like, I'm throwing them a bone. I wanted to highlight kings because there are so many awesome drag kings in Cleveland and in Northeast Ohio and Ohio in general. And also, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like a lot of the drag kings I know are very funny and they like do
yeah.
like comedic numbers. So I was like, that's the perfect blend. It's two like niche things kind of like to already do a drag comedy show and then to do a drag king comedy show. It's sort of like double layered. So I was nervous when we did the first one back in November. I was nervous. I didn't know if people would be into it. I didn't know if people would come. But we ended up selling the show out, which is so awesome to see like the community
Yeah.
come and support drag kings and to support comedy. And it was really cool too because it's at a new venue for a lot of people, Imposters Theater in Cleveland. It's a seated comedy venue, which is cool. It's a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like just being able to sit down and not stand the whole time.
It's very accessible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very accessible, which is something that we need more spaces like that in the drag community already because there are a ton of like disabled performers and also disabled like audience members who struggle at certain venues because they can't sit down. And I won't say this venue is like perfect, but it was cool that, it was seated. People could just chill and like watch the show. But yeah, no, it was so cool. And yeah, the show sold out. So many people came and supported. And I think it was just a success. So I'm really excited to do another one and to have all new drag, like not new drag kings, but different drag kings from the first one, and the second one. So yeah, I don't know. It's just cool to like have a space for drag kings and have a space for us to be silly and goofy and not have to, tailor ourselves to a specific audience because sometimes at certain shows if you're a drag king you kind of have to change your persona a bit because maybe like a typical audience who is used to queens won't really be into you, so you just gotta like pull out the chaps and do a cowboy number every now and again. Which is also fun, like love that, but this is like a space where people can do whatever they want and they can be so silly, they can be so goofy, and the audience is going to be into it.
You've mentioned that there's going to be a second installment of Jester's Privilege. When is that going to be?
Yeah, so the second ever Jester's Privilege is going to be on March 29th. It starts at 9:30 and it's at Imposters Theater in Cleveland, Ohio. So come out. The last one sold out, so get your tickets now. Get your tickets now, please, 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 get your tickets out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I cannot wait to see the new cast. That's going to be such an awesome environment for drag and kings and comedy. Yeah, it's so exciting. Also, timely, Kingpin Season 2 is going on. You won the first season, so I think that you know something about competitions. So just as kind of an overall question, what advice do you have for drag kings who are participating in competitions anywhere or who are considering getting into competitions?
Well, competitions are a great opportunity to grow your drag. So I would say if you have the opportunity to do a competition, like at least apply. The worst that they can say is, hey, maybe not this season, but maybe next season, right? It's a great opportunity to push yourself, every week, every other week, to have specific prompts and challenges that inspire you to do something that maybe you wouldn't typically do. Like pretty much every week of Kingpin, I had to create something that I wouldn't have created had I not had to follow a prompt. Like the cosplay week of Kingpin, I would have never done that crazy Ryuk number or look had I not been, told I had to do a cosplay look. So it's a really cool opportunity. Definitely do one if you can. I've never done a competition that was mixed like with kings and queens. I know that can be a unique challenge for kings because typically the judges panel will be all queens and they don't necessarily always know how to critique and judge a drag king. But still, I think it's cool to get yourself out there. If anything, more people are seeing you every week and like discovering your drag, which is cool. But then when it comes to actually competing, this is my advice. I think that you have to be convinced that you're going to win. Like you have to have a little bit of drag delusion, I fear. And some people are like, you can do both. Okay, you can be like, I'm going to go into this competition to have fun. That's what I did with Kingpin. I was like, I want to have fun. I want to like have a good relationship with these boys that I'm competing against. But I also was like, if I'm going to go into this and spend quite a bit of money, because competitions aren't cheap, you have to make all these looks every week.
Right.
It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of time. I was like, if I'm going to go into this, I'm going to go into it thinking that I'm going to win. So I did. I was like, I fear I have to win this competition. And what would have happened if I didn't win? Would I probably have been really sad? Yes. But also, I know that I grew so much either way. So, and plus, everybody in that competition deserved to win. Like everybody was talented and no matter who won, it was going to be sick. And it was also the first like drag king competition, quote, maybe ever. I'm not sure. But I think you have to have a bit of drag delusion. I think you have to think that you're the hottest person ever and you're the funniest person ever. And maybe that's just me projecting because I'm not really the most confident person. So I was like, I have to fake this confidence on stage or else it's gonna be bleak. So I think go into it thinking you're the shit, and then you'll be the shit, or at least you'll convince other people that you're the shit, even if you're not. Like if they see you on stage and you look super confident, they're gonna be like, maybe this is good. Even if it's not, they're like, this person seems like they really think they're good, so maybe it just is good. So yeah, have confidence. Just put a lot of effort into your drag. If you're doing a competition, you're going to be judged by people every single week, which is a hard thing to do. It's hard to hear people talk about your drag, but all you can do is like do your best and put your best self forward and put effort into your looks. And at the end of the day, your drag is really only meant for yourself. You know, you're not there to please everybody. It's impossible to get everybody to like your drag. I've been at several shows where I've been performing and the audience just does not fuck with me. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have, and it's marked explicit on Spotify. So
Okay.
like Twisted and I said the F slur back and forth like 3 times. So you're fine.
I do remember that. I don't even remember why I was swearing, but I'm sure it was justified. But
Yeah,
yeah, you just have to like think you're the shit, and you can't like please everybody. I've definitely been at a few shows where people have not been fucking with me. That's how that's why I was saying that. But I know that I'm being silly and goofy and putting out something that I like, and really at the end of the day, that's all that matters. If you like what you do, then hey, you're doing something right.
absolutely. I think that's great advice for everyone to take to heart. All right. Is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't covered?
No, I will say this. Drag kings are so dynamic because I was listening to Twisted's episode and it was beautiful. Like I almost cried when he was talking about, his experience with religion, and that audio clip that he used was by, a priest
A
that his
pastor,
family,
yeah.
a pastor that his family listens to. And he just had such beautiful things to say. So well spoken. Love that boy. And
Hmm.
then, I'm here talking about how I dress up as Benjamin Franklin. And drag kings are just so dynamic. To whoever says that drag kings are boring and that we can't do as good as queens, listen to the first episode of this podcast and then listen to this episode and tell me that we're not dynamic, because this is crazy. Like Twisted's episode is just so beautiful. Yeah. But I don't know. Drag kings, they go up there. They take their clothes off sometimes. So fun. Love it. Sometimes they also get struck by electricity. So
Hmm.
fun. I love it. Drag kings are awesome. That's my statement. And you can quote me on that.
I think that's perfect. I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much for your time, Abel. Thank you for listening to Kings on the Aux. This episode featured Northeast Ohio drag king Abel N. Willing and was hosted by Cleveland drag king Caius Crow. You can find Abel's looks, performance videos, and upcoming show dates on Instagram at Abel N. Willing. That's ABEL_N Willing. You can find me on Instagram at Caius Crow. That's CAIUS Crow. Questions? Comments? Compliments? Complaints? Send me a message on Instagram or email me at caiuscrow@gmail.com. I'll talk to you soon on our next episode. Thank you for supporting local drag.